When people hear the word Crusades, most imagine knights marching under crosses, holy wars fought for faith, honor, and salvation. And yes, belief mattered, but belief alone doesn't move armies across continents. Belief doesn't feed tens of thousands of people. Belief doesn't build ships, supply horses, or pay for steel. Money does. Welcome to The Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide. And here, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Part 1. Europe before the Crusades. Visuals: fragmented medieval kingdoms, peasants and fields, castles, small-scale trade. In the year 1095, Europe was not a rich place. It was fragmented, violent, and economically inefficient. Power was decentralized. Kings ruled weakly. Nobles controlled land, but most lacked liquidity. There were no standing national armies, no central tax systems, no professional bureaucracies capable of financing long-distance war. Wealth existed primarily in land, not cash. You could command peasants, extract food, but mobilizing money? Almost impossible. And yet, within a few years, tens of thousands of people would travel thousands of miles to fight in the eastern Mediterranean. They would need weapons, armor, horses, ships, food, months, sometimes years of logistical support. By any modern standard, it was a military project that should have been impossible. Part 2. The Call to Crusade. Visuals: Pope Urban II speaking at Clermont, a crowd of knights reacting. The spark came in November 1095, when Pope Urban II addressed the Council of Clermont. Reclaim Jerusalem, defend Christendom, secure salvation. It was a spiritual call, but beneath it lay something else, a redirection of Europe's surplus violence outward, and, unintentionally, the creation of a new financial ecosystem. Urban II wasn't selling war to kings, he was selling legitimacy to individuals. The crowd at Clermont was filled with knights, land-holding warriors whose identities revolved around violence, but whose behavior was increasingly condemned by the church. These were often second or third sons with no inheritance, vassals bound by military obligation, household soldiers whose livelihoods depended on fighting. For them, crusading was not just a religious calling, it was a social test. Honor, loyalty, and piety were on the line. Pressure cascaded downward. Participation became contagious. Faith opened the door, but honor culture pushed them through it. Part 3. Crusaders and their costs. Visuals: knights selling lands, borrowing from moneylenders, pledging estates, traveling in large caravans with non-combatants. Crusading armies were moving societies, not professional forces. Knights brought retainers, servants, craftsmen, clergy, laborers, dependents. Thousands of non-combatants accompanied the fighting men. Europe exported not just soldiers, but surplus violence, instability, and social tension outward. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, involved 60,000 to 100,000 people. For knights, the cost of participation could equal several years of income. There were no state stipends, no war bonds, no treasury checks. Crusaders had to finance themselves, selling lands at steep discounts, mortgaging estates to monasteries, borrowing heavily from moneylenders, pledging future harvests, promising political favors. Immediate liquidity mattered more than solvency. Salvation was time-sensitive. Debt could wait. Part 4. The Financialization of War. Visuals: Venetian, Genoese, and Pisan trade routes, bustling medieval ports. Once war became something you financed, intermediaries appeared. Italian merchant republics like Venice, Genoa, and Pisa realized crusaders needed ships and transport, credit, supplies, ports and warehouses, insurance against loss. By the early 12th century, crusading routes became trade routes. Ports servicing crusaders grew wealthy. Shipyards expanded, contracts multiplied. The church watched carefully. It was a transnational institution, owning land, running courts, educating elites, and wielding moral authority no king could match. Yet it lacked a standing tax system. The solution? Crusade taxes. Clergy taxed, laity taxed, sometimes in place of fighting. Indulgences offered financial contributions in exchange for spiritual benefits. What began as emergency fundraising hardened into recurring revenue. Belief became leverage. Part 5. The Templars and Banking. Visuals: Templar knights traveling, counting coins, transferring funds. The Templar Knights, founded in 1119, emerged to protect pilgrims but quickly evolved, accepting deposits, transferring funds across borders, issuing letters of credit. By the 12th century, the Templars operated one of Europe's most sophisticated financial networks, armored knights thinking like bankers. When the Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, contracted Venice for transport, the Crusaders couldn't pay. Venice redirected the expedition to attack Zara, then sack Constantinople. Result: disaster for Byzantium, enormous profit for Venice. The pattern was clear. Faith mobilized people, finance determined outcomes. Part 6. Winners, losers, and long-term consequences. Visuals: peasants burdened with taxes, wealthy cities thriving, Templar estates, church tax collection. Winners: Italian merchant republics embedded in logistics, military orders like Templars and Hospitallers accumulating land and wealth, the church institutionalizing fiscal authority. Losers: peasants paying higher taxes, noble families ruined by debt, Jewish communities scapegoated for financial roles. War had become asymmetric. Losses were personal, profits institutional. Debt and finance shifted power upward, concentrating capital in institutions that survived conflict. Part 7. The legacy of the Crusades. Visuals: medieval cities, trade expansion, later banks, European maps. By the late 13th century, religious narrative frayed. Jerusalem changed hands repeatedly. Acre fell in 1091, ending Crusader presence in the Holy Land. But the financial structures endured. Taxation normalized. Military orders influenced banking systems. Merchant republics pivoted from crusade to empire. Europe had learned. Faith opens wallets, institutions profit from permanence, and violence, once financialized, becomes self-sustaining. Closing scene. Visuals: knights fading into maps of modern banks and militaries, coins transforming into charts. History doesn't repeat, but it trains. The Crusades teach Europe, and us, that systems that need conflict to justify their existence can survive long after the original mission fades. Money and power aligned by moral certainty rarely impose cost on the powerful. Understanding this isn't cynical, it's preparation.